Hey kids, welcome back to my living room. I suspect that you're probably in your living rooms or maybe your bedroom. A lot of kids watch this in their kitchens. There's all sorts of places in your house. But you are indeed in your house, aren't you? You're not out at school, and it's tough to get out and play with kids while we're keeping our distance and whatnot. And you know what? That's one of the great advantages to all the great books we've been reading. When you read a book, you are actually taken to a different place. Remember, the very first book we read was about Ferdinand the Bull, and he was in Spain, and he took a cart ride into Madrid and back to Spain, so we got to spend a little bit of time in Spain. So today, I thought I'd read a book that would take us to Russia. So even though you're sitting in your living room or bedroom or wherever, today we're going to read a book and spend a little bit of time in Russia. The name of the book is Caps for Sale. If you were wondering while I was wearing a cap, we're reading a book called Caps for Sale. And this book was written by a Russian, as you might expect. Her name is Esphyr Slobodkina, and she is a Russian artist who wrote a number of books for kids and even did the illustrations. So let's take a little journey into Russia with our caps on. Caps for sale. Once there was a peddler who sold caps, but he was not like an ordinary peddler, carrying his wares on his back. He carried them on top of his head. First he had on his own checkered cap, then a bunch of gray caps, then a bunch of brown caps, then a bunch of blue caps, and then on the very top, a bunch of red caps. Take a look at that picture. He's got all those caps balanced on his head in his little Russian village. He walked up and down the streets, holding himself very straight so as not to upset the caps. He went along, he called, "Caps, caps for sale, 50 cents a cap." At 50 cents, I think we should buy 1,000 caps and start our own little business over here. One morning, he couldn't sell any caps. He walked up the street and he walked down the street, calling, "Caps, caps for sale, 50 cents a cap." But nobody wanted any caps that morning. Nobody wanted even a red cap. He began to feel very hungry, but he had no money for lunch. "I think I'll go for a walk in the country," said he, and he walked out of town, slowly, slowly, so as not to upset his caps. He walked for a long time until he came to a great tree. "That's a nice place for a rest," thought he. And he sat down very slowly under the tree and leaned back little by little against the tree trunk so as not to disturb the caps on his head. Then he put up his hand to feel if they were straight. First his own checkered cap, then the gray caps, then the brown caps, then the blue caps, then the red caps on the very top. So he's sitting up very straight. All his caps are on his head. He must sleep very stilly. They were all there. So he went to sleep, and he slept for a long time. Looks like a beautiful day, doesn't it? That could almost be West Virginia. When he woke up, he was refreshed and rested. Take a close look at the picture. But before standing up, he felt with his hand to make sure his caps were in the right place. And all he felt was his own checkered cap. That's why I told you to look closely at the picture. The caps aren't there. He looked to the right of him. No caps. He looked to the left of him. No caps. He looked in back of him. Nope, no caps. He looked behind the tree. No caps. He's looking around. Then he looked up into the tree. And what do you think he saw? On every branch sat a monkey. On every monkey was a gray or a brown or a blue or a red cap. That is a great picture. The peddler looked at the monkeys. The monkeys looked at the peddler. He didn't know what to do. Finally, he spoke to them. You monkeys, you, he said, shaking a finger at them. You monkeys, you give me back my caps. But the monkeys only shook their fingers back at him and said, that's what they said. This made the peddler angry, so he shook both hands at them and said, you monkeys, you give me back my caps. But the monkeys only shook both their hands back at him and said, nothing like monkeys. Now he felt quite angry. He stamped his foot and he said, you monkeys, you better give me back my caps. But the monkeys only stamped their feet back at him and said, picture, he's stamping his foot. Those monkeys make funny sounds, don't they? By this time, the peddler was really very, very angry. He stamped both feet and shouted, you monkeys, you give me back my caps. But the monkeys only stamped both their feet back at him and said, he's stomping his feet, they're stomping their feet, they're making funny noises from somewhere. At last, he became so angry that he pulled off his own cap and threw it on the ground and began to walk away. I think he's had it. But then, each monkey pulled off his cap and all the gray caps and all the brown caps and all the blue caps and all the red caps came flying down out of the tree. Whew, I didn't know I had monkeys in here. So the peddler picked up his caps and put them back on his head. First, his own checkered cap. Fortunately, in my trees, I have West Virginia monkeys. They wear cool caps. Then the gray caps, then the brown caps, then the blue caps, then the red caps on the very top. And slowly, slowly, he walked back to town calling, caps, caps for sale, 50 cents a cap. What a great little story from Russia. And there's another thing about books. Not only do they take you to different places around the world while you're sitting home, you can use your imagination and imagine being all over the world. Every story tends to have a moral to the story. Have you ever heard a person ask the question, what's the moral of the story? And what that means is, what's the message? What's the message the book gives to you as you read it? And what can you think about after you finish reading it? So on this book, Caps for Sale, there is a message. about the monkeys and the salesman of the caps. My question to you is, what do you think the moral of the story was? Think about that a minute. He shook his finger, they shook his finger. He stamped both feet, they stamped both feet. He threw his cap down, they threw their caps down. Think about the moral of that story. And if you have any difficulty with it, why don't you ask your parents? And if you really get stuck, if the whole family gets stuck, you read the book together, and if you're still stuck, I think you could ask your teacher the next time you're on classroom dojo with your teacher. Well, there you go, kids. Another story, this time from Russia. And next week, we'll see if we can find another good story to read that has a good moral to it, too. Have a good week, guys. See you next week.